What's up, comic book fans? And welcome to Comics Icons. Now, JJ, what they call me. And today, we got the end, ladies and gentlemen. The official ending to the fall of the House of X and the Krakoan era with X-Men issue 35 and the Legacy number 700 issue. And if you guys missed any parts of the Fall of the House of X event, then I'll put up a card for you at the top of the screen. And I'll put a link at the end of the video as well. But when we left off with this event, the X-Men had completed the mission. Krakoa had been saved. Orchis and the AI had been taken down, and the Enigma Dominion has been stopped. So what's left for the X-Men now? And one thing about this issue, with it being number 700, it's kind of a tribute issue. And there's a lot of different writers and artists that worked on it. And what's cool about it is if you stay to the end, we get a nice little lead in and preview for From the Ashes. So if you guys are ready to see how the Krakoan era officially comes to an end, and what comes next from the ashes, then you guys know what time it is. Let's get it. So we start this issue with Charles Xavier being transported to prison after giving himself up. But the transport gets ambushed, and out of nowhere, Wolverine strikes. And the guards carrying Xavier initially think that the X-Men are coming to rescue the prisoner. But nah, that's not it at all. This is a hunt, and Logan's coming for old Chucky boy. And when Logan cuts his way to Charles, he asks if Charles has any last words before he puts him down. Something that maybe make him change his mind and pull his claws back. But Charles doesn't respond, so Logan takes that as an answer and he goes for the kill. But he's held back by Magneto, who refuses to let Logan make another martyr. He and his old friend need to have a conversation. So Magneto calmly flicks his wrists to send Logan flying off to God knows where. And then Magneto takes Charles's containment to a more secluded location. Magneto wants to know how we got to this point with Charles being in this position. But Charles reminds his old friend Magneto about how he quit and then died. So Charles was forced to make choices. People died, and the rest lived, but now he's got to pay the price. But then Charles wants to know what it was that happened to Magneto, and he replies the same, that he quit, and he died. But then in death, he saw the error of his ways, and he realized that what they had done was not enough. They were flawed in how they went about their dream, but eventually the dream had died in Magneto, and he could no longer sleep. He played the game of laws of nations to ensure the safety of mutants, but it didn't work. And in embracing the world's power, he turned his back on the world. But he will not do it again. He won't appease, but he also won't assimilate. Anywhere where there are people that face oppression by power based off of who they are, whether human or mutant, then they share the same enemy: hatred. And to Charles, this is funny because after all this time and everything that they've been through, Magneto still can't just say that Charles Xavier was right. But regardless, he is happy for his friend that he's found the true fight now. But Charles, meanwhile, is a bit more cynical after everything that he's done. He does, though, hope that Magneto wins. It would make the world better. But now it's just time for him to go to his cell. But before they go, Charles senses something happening. Something wonderful is happening with Krakoa, as the island seems to expand out of nowhere. And we then pick up on Krakoa as a now much older Kafka arrives, and is greeted by Doug Ramsey. After 15 years, the mutants stranded in the White Hot Room finally worked out a way to return. Their Krakoa had insisted that they not leave behind this Krakoa. But after 15 years, the Krakoa from the White Hot Room has changed, and no longer even speaks the same language as regular Krakoa. So Doug's gonna have to translate their reintroduction. Then hours later, Emma Frost and more of the X-Men return to the island after attempting to talk down world leaders from war. And they all meet up in the Quiet Council room, and Exodus, most of all, is thrilled to see little Kafka. Albeit not so little anymore, but he fills in everybody about what's been going on for the last 15 years for the White Hot Room mutants. And since they at least had the 4 and a cradle and nothing but time, they resurrected all of the 15 million mutants that died on Genosha. Little Kafka and squad for the win, y'all. Who knew how important little homie would be? But they open up the gates and let the mutants return back to their loved ones and whoever they needed to see to tell them that they were okay. The X-Men started it, Kafka tells them, and they finished it. A mutant circuit. Then Jean asks about Hope and if she was with them. And according to Kafka, she was in a sense. The White Hot Room is the home of the Phoenix, and they don't really understand it, but resurrection works there, and they feel her. Hope lives in Krakoa now in metaphor and truth, and in everything in between. Whatever that means. But he'll be happy to get back there. Though mention of going back is a shock to Exodus. But Kafka tells him that they only came here to merge the Krakoas and to drop off the mutants that wanted to go back home. Krakoa is getting ready to leave. So it's kind of like after everything was all said and done, the X-Men had thought that they'd go back and live on Krakoa. But Krakoa is about to skate on their asses. But this pisses off Exodus, and he refuses to let it happen. And then he throws a pretty destructive tantrum. And now the X-Men are forced to fight Exodus, who is now holed up in the council room. He's not gonna let Krakoa leave. But Apocalypse arrives, and Kafka tells him of this. And then he asks Apocalypse if he could talk Exodus down. He knows that Krakoa is hurting from staying there strung between dimensions. But Apocalypse ain't one for talking someone down. Plus time for talk is past, he tells Kafka. He can think through his eras of passion if he lives. And then Apocalypse approaches his former acolyte and tells him to stand down. But Exodus rebuts that he was only Apocalypse's for a short time, and then he attacks Apocalypse. But Apocalypse brushes it off and then tells Exodus that once his, always his. And then he grabs Exodus by the head and he straight up spikes his dome into the ground. But then Kafka tells everyone that this time for Krakoa has actually taken hundreds of thousands of years off of its life cycle. But the X-Men aren't to blame for this since they had their own issue to deal with. But Krakoa is gonna have to make this move. And he and the rest of the mutants that have decided to not stay on Earth are gonna go with and do their parts to help sustain Krakoa. And then he shows everyone wood carvings that they made to chronicle the history, since so much had been wiped away. But Apocalypse takes offense to this, because he is their past. He's their history, and he doesn't appreciate being replaced by a wooden statue. Does his lessons no longer apply in the white hot heaven, he asks? But Kafka tells him that the way he taught them here doesn't apply. Survival of the fittest isn't who's strongest, but survival of the best fit, as in the best to fit the context one finds themselves in. To choose what attributes are the best fit. In terms of efficiency, altruism is best. Violent competition is a distraction from survival in the long term. But then Kafka tries to soften the blow, telling Apocalypse not to take it the wrong way. They don't think he did bad at all, but the gravity of what he called human thinking was impossible to escape. But he gave them the space to become this, and they are extremely thankful. And he extends his hand to Apocalypse in respect. And Apocalypse is kind of flabbergasted in his response. And he's like, "You reject our most radical ideas and say this?" But Kafka doubles down. "No, we respect everything you did as steps along the way. We just didn't think they were radical enough." And before I go on to the next page, it's like as I'm reading this, I'm sitting here thinking like, little boy, what in the hell do you think you're doing? You don't just let Apocalypse down that easy. This ain't a date that you just weren't feeling. And it's not gonna end like you think it will. And then Apocalypse accepts the handshake. But then he takes little Kafka's hand and he swings him around and spikes him too. Apocalypse is straight up lost it, y'all. And everybody can get it now. "My ideas were not radical enough. I was far too lenient," he tells them. "So there will now be pain." And the rest of the mutants jump in to fight him, thinking that he's been compromised in some way. But he's not compromised at all. This is Apocalypse. This is who he's always been. "Who saved Araco?" he asks. "I did." "Who saved Krakoa?" "I did." "Who rekindled the flame of mutant magic?" "Who gave you your future?" "I did." "Yet when I let you seek it alone, did you bring the fire back from heaven? or dull metal and cheap coin. I gave you everything. He was never content to just survive. They were meant for greater things. Krakoa wishes to rotate back into the white hot room and maybe return again later. Cool. But y'all not ready for this quest. You don't have the proper leadership. So he's got to bear the load, and if they hate him forever, just know that he still loves them even as he breaks them. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to everyone else, Doom and his mutant team fly over Krakoa. They notice that a larger island has now arrived, and Doom wants to add a part of it to his garden, so he sends Volta down to retrieve a Krakoan seed, but to make sure that no one sees her. So she teleports down and snatches the seed, but she notices that someone indeed is watching her. But she swears that mutant a secrecy about her being there, and then she teleports back to Doom with the seed and tells him that she was unseen. So that's interesting, y'all. Apparently Doom has some plans from the ashes too. We're gonna have to wait and see what he's got. But meanwhile, the rest of the X-Men all fight now together against Apocalypse. And it's cool because I usually hate when we get that switch up between the different artists, which has actually happened a lot throughout this book. But here it works so well in Tribute as we see the fight with Apocalypse through all of the different artists, which is kind of dope. But the Apocalypse fight ends with him and Colossus fighting as Apocalypse, of course, gets the upper hand and puts him down. And then he continues his tirade, asking all of the mutants who will come and join his cause and shape mutantdom for the next generation. But then the goddess Storm comes down to chat, and she tries to convince him to stand down and end this argument with the X-Men. But then Wolverine steps up to get him some, and he tells Apocalypse that his kids want no more of what he's selling. And then he and Deadpool jump on Apocalypse and give him everything they've got. Logan even puts his claws right through the side of Apocalypse's face. But it's not enough to put him down, and Wolverine knew it wouldn't be. He just wanted to make Apocalypse feel the pain. But Apocalypse returns the favor, and he grabs Logan's other arm and forces Logan to drive him right into his own neck, so he can enjoy some of that pain with him. But then Nightcrawler comes in and does the craziest, most gangster thing ever. And he teleports in and bamfs away Apocalypse's eyes right out of his head. Yo, that's crazy, y'all. But it's still not enough to put down Apocalypse. And then Emma Frost comes down and tries to use her telepathy to calm him down. But that doesn't work either, as he just knocks her clear across the island. But then Jean Grey steps up with the power of the Phoenix. Apocalypse can't win that fight, and as she pulls Emma Frost back, she tells Apocalypse that Emma was right in what she was trying to tell him. All the mutants of Genosha have returned. 15 years have passed for Krakoa. They haven't had to live with a Sentinel for a long time. No Stryker, no Orchis, no nothing. They don't even know who the X-Men are. Then she has Apocalypse see the minds for himself. They are Krakoan, Jean tells him. They're everything you could have wished mutantdom to become. But you're too busy fighting to see them as they are. And when Apocalypse sees, his resolve doesn't change. But he does retreat for now. And then after 24 hours have passed, the island is now ready to go, as well as the rest of the mutants, so everyone says their goodbyes. And as all of the X-Men stand together and watch as the island begin to rotate like a glittering jewel, now shimmering from the rays of the sunset. To this day, those who saw it cannot describe it. Only that it was a beautiful dream. A dream that was, for a moment, real. And shown with infinite love and care, as it shifted beyond dreams into higher reality. And then we're shown Krakoa in its final form, almost like an alpha Groot or something. And that, my friends, is the end of the Krakoan age. Or at least the first one. But stay right there, folks, because we got a little bit more as we pick up with Apocalypse now on Arakko, as he says that it's now time for him to choose his heir. And then we pick up with Mother Righteous in her cell on the Orchis base, as she's approached by Dr. Stasis, who's come to rescue her. Except it's not Dr. Stasis, it's Mystique who gets her revenge and stabs Mother Righteous and ends her. Then we look in on Xavier in his prison, and although he was put into this cage with all this anti-psychic hardware, apparently a long time ago, he had been just as suspicious of his friends as they were of him, And he left a simple compulsion in the midst of all of the world's greatest geniuses. That if they make a cage for Charles Xavier, they're gonna leave a loophole. As we see a mutant that gets stalked by some guy, but Xavier intervenes, and before he knows it, that man finds himself standing over a rooftop. Xavier's gonna make the most of being hated and feared. Then we get a short story about Nightcrawler, Mystique, Raven, and Rogue that's pretty decent, and I'm not gonna go over it in full. You guys can just go ahead and check it out for yourselves, but Nightcrawler finally gets the official reunion, and he gets him a chance to let his frustrations out. And then last but not least, we get one last look in on Charles Xavier and his prison in another short story. His prison is a building with no street address, and he's a man that only wants to be forgotten. But as Xavier sits in this cage with his mental loophole, he decides to go and check on his X-Men once more. And he visits Alaska, where Cyclops and Beast have found a new location to call home and rebuild the X-Men, as he calls out to his new team, "To me, my X-Men." Then in Mexico City, as Rogue and Gambit enjoy a second honeymoon before they worry about everyone being scattered about, and Rogue goes in to kiss her guy. "To me, my X-Man," she proclaims. Then we travel to Chicago and check in with Kate Pryde, as she now leads a normal life as a bartender, and a co-worker fills out a crossword puzzle and asks Kate what a man of steel sounds like to her. And she replies, "To me, my ex." Me and her co-worker adds in, "Tell me about it," Kate replies. Then we see in Canada as Logan takes a step away from both human and mutant. And in Manhattan, where Kamala surrounds herself with both human and mutant. And then Malibu, California with Alex Summers, and Northern Montana with Forge. And then the United Nations as Storm gives a speech, and Dazzler on tour. And then at the edge of Shi'ar space, he finds the Phoenix, who's fixed a star and brought it back to life. But the Phoenix is able to sense Charles's presence and communicates with him. And after he's checked in on everyone, he goes back into his prison. And then he says goodbye. And then he just collapses. And now all the guards scramble like, what the hell just happened? How did he just keel over like that? And his vitals now show nothing. So they open the door and run in to check on him. And they've got no pulse. And then 2 days later, we pick up in Atlanta, Georgia. And we meet a Dr. Ellis, who we actually met in the Free Comic Book Day issue. And as she meets with a round table of the powerful, she tells them that the key is the school. The very idea of it has to be obliterated. It has to be something feared. It has to haunt the dreams of every mutant on Earth. As we then pick up with Xavier, as he's now in a coma and being transported to a new facility. And just as these men guarding him think that there's no chance he's waking up out of this coma, his eyes open wide open, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the issue and the Krakoan era. So what did you guys think about this final issue? And are you guys sad to see the Krakoan era end? I myself am looking forward to this next era. I've always liked the X-Men more when they've had to regularly interact with the rest of the world. I wasn't the biggest fan of Krakoa, and I do admit that this ending did feel a little bit rushed, but it was some pretty cool things in it. But did you guys get everything that you wanted from the ending? Or do you guys still have questions that went unanswered? Of course, I want to hear all you guys' thoughts and theories for how this ended and where you see them going with From the Ashes. And as always, if you guys enjoyed this video and this channel, and you'd like to support the channel, then you could do so by stopping by the Comics Icon store and picking you up some of this merchandise, including the background music heard right here in this video available for download, or by joining the Iconic Fan Club channel membership. And it'll be a link in the description to join. But with your membership, your voice will be heard during our interactive live streams with yours truly, where we can talk about everything that's been going down in these issues, as well as ones that you'd like for me to go over in the future and other comic book news. Plus, you'll get loyalty badges, member shoutouts, and up to 20% off of Comics Icon's merchandise from the Comics Icon store. And now we've got new tiers to the memberships as well, starting at just 99 cents. Or you guys can donate to the channel with a super thanks. And if you're not able to do any of that, then you can still be a tremendous help to the future of this channel. by dropping a like, share, and subscribing to Comics Icons for more icons in the comic book world. But ladies and gentlemen, it's about that time. I'm out. Peace.